Have you ever played through a piece cleanly, actually felt pretty good about it, and then immediately switched to the next one and had your fingers start playing the first one again? Well, maybe not exactly the first one again, but things like the wrong key signature creeping in. Like if you've been playing in the key of F for the last couple of pieces and then you switch to the key of G, that B flat wants to linger and it's hard to remember the F sharp. Old fingering patterns firing when they shouldn't, your hands going somewhere they weren't supposed to go, almost like they didn't get the memo that you had moved on. That's not a memory problem, it's not sloppiness, and it's not a sign that you didn't practice enough. It has a name. It's actually called proactive interference. And once you understand what's actually happening, you can stop fighting your own brain and start working with it. Proactive interference is what happens when something you've already learned gets in the way of something new. The word proactive here doesn't exactly mean forward thinking. It means the old learning is acting forward in time, reading into the new material and actually kind of disrupting it. In everyday terms, your brain learned something, encoded it, and now that encoding is so strong that it keeps activating even when you don't want it to. At the piano, this shows up in specific ways. You move from a piece in D major to play a piece in F major. And for the first several bars, your fingers keep reaching for the F sharp, C sharp, because that's where they've been living. The old key signature doesn't reset the moment you flip the page. Or you've been playing a passage with a particular fingering, and then you learn the same passage with corrected fingering. And every single time you get to that spot, the old fingers want to take over. The brain encoded the first version, and that encoding has seniority. Or you practice two pieces back to back, and the ending of the first one bleeds into the beginning of the second. Same tempo, similar feel, and your hands just keep going as if nothing has changed. Your brain isn't making mistakes, it's doing exactly what it's designed to do. Reuse a map that already exists rather than drawing a new one from scratch. Why reinvent the wheel? The problem is it's using the wrong map. Here's what's actually happening in the brain. Your brain is wired for efficiency. When you've practiced something enough that it's become encoded, a key signature, a fingering pattern, a particular sequence of movements, the brain builds a pathway for it. And the more you've used that pathway, the more dominant it becomes. Dominant pathways don't just sit quietly waiting to be called. They have a kind of momentum. And when you're in a context that resembles the one where they were built, they tend to activate. Sometimes before you've consciously decided to use them. The brain doesn't reset instantly when you switch pieces. It carries that momentum forward. The old pathway is still warm, still effective, and it takes a deliberate signal to tell the brain that the context has switched and a different map is needed. Without that signal, the brain defaults to what it knows best, which is the old piece or the old fingering or the old key or whatever it is. This is why switching between two pieces that are at a similar difficulty level, maybe at the same tempo, similar texture, similar feel, causes more interference than switching between two pieces that are clearly distinct from each other. The more similar the context, the harder it is for the brain to know which map to load. I want to be straightforward with you here. Proactive interference is something I've observed consistently in lessons for years, but I wouldn't say I have a fully established protocol for it yet. What I do have is an observation that has started to inform how I teach. The most useful thing I've found so far is simply this: deliberate key switching. When I notice a student struggling to make the mental shift between keys, I'll start building that switching into their practice more intentionally. Instead of always playing pieces in the same key back to back, we practice moving between different keys on purpose, not to work any one piece specifically, but to train the brain to make that context shift more cleanly. The idea is straightforward. If the brain only ever experiences key signatures in isolation, one piece fully learned before another is introduced, it doesn't get much practice at switching. But if you regularly ask it to move between keys deliberately, the transition itself starts to become more familiar, maybe even less jarring. The old map releases a little more readily because the brain has practiced letting it go. It's a simple observation, not a formal system, but it's consistent with what we know about how the brain handles competing pathways. The more you practice a particular kind of transition, the more automatic that transition becomes. What I don't yet have is a step-by-step protocol for working through this systematically. That's something I'm continuing to develop based on what I see in lessons. But awareness of what's happening is itself useful. Because once a student understands that this is proactive interference and not a personal failing, they approach the problem completely differently. So here's what I want you to take away from this. When proactive interference happens, when your fingers keep playing the old piece or the old key signature keeps creeping in, that is not you being sloppy. That is not evidence that you didn't practice enough or that you have a bad memory. It's your brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. Protect the pathways it worked hard to build by keeping them active and ready. The issue isn't that your brain is malfunctioning. It's that you haven't yet given it a clear enough signal that the context has changed. And once you do, deliberately, consistently, the interference gets quieter. The brain learns to make clearer separations. You just have to give it clearer boundaries. I'm curious, does this happen to you? If you regularly switch between two pieces and one keeps bleeding into the other, drop the keys in the comments. I genuinely like to know which combinations give people the most trouble. And if you want to look at this in the context of your own reading process, where the underlying patterns are strong enough to override what's going on the page, that's exactly what I dig into in the reading assessment. The link is below. It's $37 and it's specific to your playing, not general advice. I'll see you in the next video.